So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
A certain point of view?
Hey, I'm Lenny Sherman, and welcome to yet another Star Wars Theory. With the release of The Last Jedi, many fans were upset with Rian Johnson's choices, specifically with the reveal of Rey's parents. Before the release of Episode 8, many fans speculated that she was either the daughter of Luke Skywalker or a descendant of Obi-Wan Kenobi. Yet others pointed to the possibility that she could be the hidden daughter of Han and Leia. Of course, Rian Johnson squashed those rumors when it was revealed that Rey's parents were nobody special.
Say it.
They were nobody.
This seemed to convey the message that greatness comes from small beginnings, and that you don't have to be of the Skywalker lineage to take advantage of the Force. First of all, I don't feel the Star Wars films ever conveyed that you have to be a Skywalker to be strong with the Force. Just look at all the Jedi from the prequel trilogy. Yoda is one of the most powerful Jedi ever, and I highly doubt he's a member of the Skywalker clan. In fact, in all three trilogies, that message about coming from small beginnings has transcended all the protagonists. Anakin was a slave, Luke was a farmer, and Rey a scavenger. So this message about being important even if you come from nothing special, it isn't exactly breaking new ground. I don't think the issue here is that you have to be a Skywalker to use the Force. That isn't what the movies have been saying, even though Anakin and Luke both proved to be powerful Force users. What is an issue is that these films, up until The Force Awakens, follow two generations of Skywalkers. I understand that mastermind George Lucas no longer calls the shots and that Disney pretty much disregarded his ideas in favor of creating a more marketable series of movies, i.e. safe movies that were sure to make Disney's $4 billion investment pay off. But back when Lucas controlled the property, it was my understanding that each trilogy was going to be about the Skywalker lineage. The prequels were about Anakin, the original trilogy followed Luke, and the sequel trilogy, if Lucas ever got around to it, would be about Luke and Leia's offspring. If the main protagonist isn't a Skywalker, then why market these films as sequels? Why not just start a whole new series of films that separate themselves from the original 6 movies? Well, that's a dumb question. I know why. But it begs the question, why should we care about Rey if she has no connection with the Skywalker clan? Here's my theory, and I'm actually surprised that I haven't heard anyone discuss this possibility. Remember, I was the one who jokingly predicted that Force Awakens would be about the Rebels having to destroy a third Death Star. It was a joke, and then the film came out, and it literally had the Rebels destroying another Death Star.
This is Starkiller Base.
So it's big.
There's a lot of debate as to whether or not J.J. Abrams will retcon Rian Johnson's decision and decide to make Rey a part of the Skywalker family tree. Didn't you watch the original trilogy? Originally, we're told that Luke's father was killed at the hands of Darth Vader. Then, in the next movie, we find out that Vader is Luke's father. That revelation is so powerful that I think a lot of people forget what information we were originally given. But there is a very clear formula here. In the first film, we get an important piece of information that defines our hero. In the second film, we get a revelation that completely changes the direction of the story, and in the last film, the things we learned are confirmed. In a way, The Last Jedi is one big red herring because, as the second part of a trilogy, we're expecting the big reveal to come at the end of that film. It's obvious that Rian Johnson wants to play around with our expectations, so what if this time they're saving all the big reveals for the third film? Well, come to think of it, Rey's parentage is a reveal, just not the one fans were expecting. But we still have Episode 9, right? Let me cut to the chase and explain my theory. Rey is Luke's daughter. Well, that's not what Kylo Ren told Rey in The Last Jedi. Just hear me out. We do know that when Luke suspected Kylo Ren of being evil and attempted to kill him, Kylo retaliated by burning down Luke's newly founded Jedi Academy. We also learn that Luke took a dozen Jedi, including Kylo Ren, under his tutelage. My theory is that Luke fell in love with one of these Jedi and had a child with her. When Kylo Ren destroys the Jedi Academy and all the Jedi within, he spares Luke's daughter because she's his blood. Kylo Ren takes her to Jakku, where she's adopted by a couple of careless junk traders. So what Kylo Ren tells Rey is true, from a certain point of view. First of all, there are different kinds of parents. Depending on how old Rey was when all this happened, she would have no memory of Luke as her father. The parents she knew were the ones who sold her off to Unkar Plutt. Going back to Luke, Luke grew up under the supervision of his aunt and uncle, so Rey being put in a similar situation suddenly makes sense and lines up with Luke's upbringing. Some fans might think this is just too derivative of the original trilogy, but if you've seen The Force Awakens, and God knows how many of these recent live-action remakes, you know that Disney hasn't exactly been known for their ingenuity as of late. Disney has been all about going back to the well and using what works. So suddenly, this line of thinking doesn't sound so out of place, does it? So you're looking for proof. Prove your theory if you're so dang smart, says the Star Wars Online community. First off, let's look at the most obvious connection to Luke. The moment Rey touches Luke's original lightsaber, which is actually Anakin's lightsaber. She sees a vision of Cloud City, which makes sense since that's where Luke last used the iconic weapon. But then Rey gets flashbacks of her childhood, and mixed in with these images, we actually see Kylo and the Knights of Ren destroying the Jedi Temple. Why would Rey see these images if she wasn't there to begin with? At the very least, Anakin's lightsaber had to be present at some point within these locations. It also bears mentioning that it's entirely possible that Rey is as powerful as she is because she's had prior training. She just doesn't remember because she was so young. Remember, Supreme Leader Snoke talks about Kylo Ren's raw, untapped power when they first met.
Raw, untamed power.
And Kylo was a Solo. Rey has the same untapped potential. Just think about that for a tick. My second piece of evidence, check out the scene in Force Awakens when the officer addressing Kylo Ren brings up the girl who helps BB-8 escape.
The two were accompanied by a girl.
What girl?
Notice Kylo's reaction at the mere mention of this girl. This is before he even meets Rey, and this is a direct reference to their escape from Jakku, the very planet where Kylo Ren sent Rey to go live in exile. Rey and Kylo share a psychic connection with the Force, sure, but I'm pretty sure their pasts are intertwined. They've met before, only Rey was so young, again, she would have no memory of these events transpiring. Well, smarty pants, if Rey is Luke's daughter, why doesn't Luke recognize her when he first meets her? Refer to what I just said. Kylo sent Rey away to protect her from himself, but to also punish Luke. Luke probably doesn't know about this, and in fact, he probably thinks Kylo killed his daughter with the rest of his students. As far as Luke not being able to sense his daughter, I have two explanations. First, Vader wasn't able to sense Luke until he realized who Luke really was. And secondly, we discover in The Last Jedi that Luke not only exiled himself, but closed himself off to the Force, which is why Rey can't immediately sense him during her initial training on Ahch-To, that planet that's almost like Dagobah. This presumably would also stop Luke from being able to communicate with Leia or any other Force users, explaining why Leia is having a hard time finding Luke in the first place. Is it starting to make sense now? I know there are fans who don't want Rey to be a Skywalker because it would be just too easy of a revelation. But remember, this is the third trilogy in the series. These stories were designed to follow the Skywalker family. That was Lucas's intention back in the day. I know there are people who think Rey could be Han and Leia's daughter. After all, when Han first meets her, there seems to be a bit of recognition there. I doubt this is the case because all throughout Force Awakens, Leia and Han make no mention of another child. They're always discussing Ben. And I'd like to think that both Luke and Leia each had children of their own. After all, Luke was the main focus of the original 3 films to which these movies are following. There is also speculation of Rey being a Kenobi, but that doesn't seem to be plausible either, just because Obi-Wan just isn't relevant to this story. Why make that kind of a connection this late in the game? Could I be wrong? Absolutely. One of my biggest gripes with The Last Jedi was that it didn't seem to have much connective tissue with its prior film. J.J. Abrams set up these intriguing mysteries that were either shot down completely or weren't given very interesting payoffs. The Last Jedi doesn't feel like a natural continuation of the story, it just feels like another random adventure where our heroes try to take down a potentially unstoppable threat. One last clue is Rian Johnson's own explanation for why he decided to reveal Rey's parents as nobodies. At the time this is revealed to her, it's the worst thing she could possibly hear. Going back to Luke, the reason Obi-Wan wasn't forthcoming about Vader was he knew that if Luke knew the truth, there would be reluctance on Luke's part to fight him. Once Luke realizes the truth, he knows he can't take down his father, which proves as a major problem for the rebels who are depending on him to do that very thing. In Force Awakens, it's clear that Rey's motivation revolves around finding her parents, or at least finding someone to fill that gap.
And Han Solo, you feel like he's the father you never had.
Discovering that her parents are nobody strips her of that hope. But I wouldn't be surprised if her story arc in 9 has her continuing her journey to find out about her past. This isn't some Reddit theory. This is just me combing over the fine details and plugging in what makes the most sense. Hopefully, Lucasfilm won't sue me if I turn out to be right, but the pieces are all in place. While it's been made pretty clear that J.J. Abrams and other directors didn't have a complete roadmap from the beginning, I'm relatively sure that they ironed out at least a rough outline of the beginnings, middles, and ends of these characters, and they just decided to reveal these things in really strange ways, playing with our expectations and holding out until the very last chapter, which is coming sooner than we know. Either way, I'll be among the first in line to see if I was right, or if I'm just another diehard fan getting his panties in a bunch. Tell me what you think in the comments, and may the Force be with you.